Alright, that's pretty much the technically blockout finished. Now we'll move on to the highpoly. So for that we're gonna duplicate the collection so that we have a backup just in case we need to go back and change things. Name this highpoly. I am unable to spell today apparently. Okay. Now I'm going to start with the slide. So make sure we're working with the correct collection. Just, you know, we can disable the blockout for now, but we don't need to see it or use it. Although we'll just quickly move that in. There you go. Alright. So for highpoly I usually shade smooth. As you can see, it looks awful. Alright, so we're going to add a bevel modifier. Then we're going to add a subdivision modifier. As you can see, it kind of looks passable, but there's a bunch of issues. Mostly the issues are related to the bevels being applied to everything. So we're going to disable the subdiv real quick. Move to geometry. Mid to outer, we turn that into arc. Also we clamp overlap, we disable that. And as you can see, the model completely explodes. Not to worry though. We're going to go to limit method. Weight. Segments. Let's do 4, for example. I like to use 4 because it's not too much, but at the same time it retains edges nicely. And now once we have these settings done, we can go into object and select a nice flat face with a hard edge. Like this here, for example. Hit Control E W, or you can just hit Control E and then somewhere around here is bevel weights. No clue where. So yeah, just hit Control E W and you can drag the mouse to apply bevel weight to the edge. As you can see, it's too much. Also yes, do max it out. So as you can see, top left, +1. And now we adjust the amount to something that we like. You do want it to be quite big for the edges that you want to make a lot smoother. And if anything, if you don't want it to be this smooth, we can just apply a smaller bevel, or a weaker bevel in this case, which then gives us a sharper edge. So it's better to have slightly bigger than what you need, just in case you do need it. And yeah. So now that the settings are set up, so the subdivision usually comes with the edit mode enabled. I'm going to disable this so that in edit mode I do not see it. Plus it doesn't lag my viewport in edit mode. If we were to say like extrude, as you can see here, there's a bit of a hiccup here. So if we don't have that, it's just instantaneous. Also for performance, go to advanced and disable use limit surface. For some reason, I don't know why, but it lags the viewport for me. So I usually have it disabled. Also, we can disable optimal display. That's person preference. As you can see, it like approximates the wireframe. If we disable this, it shows the actual wireframe, which I find it very helpful when working with bevels. So yeah, that's pretty much all the modifiers set up. Also, if we were using a mirror modifier, you would want to put it at the very top. So basically how the stack works is it goes from top to bottom. It's mostly for performance benefits, because if you apply mirror after you do all the high poly stuff, it may impact the performance slightly. So if you are using mirror, you can just put it at the top. In this case, we're not using the mirror, so we don't have to have it enabled. All right. Now let's just start with something small. Let's do the sides, for example. So pull up the reference. It's quite a sharp edge, but at the same time it's not too sharp. There's a bit of a bevel. Everything in life has a bevel, so I'm sure you already know that. I'm just gonna quickly add some geometry here to support the mesh. Because if you don't have for example, you see how these parts are connected, these are not. If we were to apply a bevel, you usually create some sort of weird artifacts here, because the mesh doesn't know where to go, so it really roughly approximates it. Whilst here, it knows roughly where to go, so it's much more neat. So the most common issue with this kind of method is literally lack of mesh support. May that be edges or vertices. Like here we're going to have some issues. Already know. But we're going to go ahead and add the bevels here. You can also jump out of edit mode to see the subdivision work, and you can see how much how the mesh actually will look. So for now it looks decent, although a bit too beveled, I think. All right. Alright, as you can see, there's a bit of an issue. So the bevel created here creates this really awkward pinch point, which you can see in the actual shading of the mesh, which isn't good. So usually I give it an edge here. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, that's no worries. We can always adjust it. Also, just a quick side note, a good thing with this method of working is you can use bevels. You can also just use the normal techniques of controlling edges by adding support loops around it. Anyways, so a quick fix to something like this, as you can, I'm not sure how well it will pick up on the video, but there's some streaks of mesh stretching. So we give it some edge support. It almost takes it out, and then give it some support loops like this, and that completely takes away the issue of pinching. We can carry this on here, and there you go. No issues. Well, minimal issues, I should say. Doesn't have to be perfect, just, you know, give it some support, and it will work fine. Alright, as you can see here, there's another huge issue of this large n-gon face overlapping. So when you get issues like that, again, you just need some geometry in its life. There you go, you add one edge, it almost works. Give it some more love, and then it will work normally. Although this may be a problem. Okay, this almost works. As you can see, it's very pinched around the edges on the sides, and at the very top and bottom it's really open, even though it's the same bevel weight. And that is because of how this edge is here, and this, and this, and this. we could remove them, which works somewhat okay, but it's not always the case. So what I tend to do is create a loop cut all the way around to support the circle. And then in this case we don't really need the edge bevel here, but we could add it if we wanted. You could also let it go outwards a bit more. And there you go. Now we can either add bevels here too, or we can just add some support loops to let the shape be normal. And we do the same thing here. This is a mirrored mesh, so we can cheat a little bit, delete half of it, take care of one half, and then we duplicate it and invert the scale. If sometimes you don't have any way to connect the verts to, you can just connect it to the nearest edge and just create a large end-gun. That doesn't matter too much, as long as it's flat. If there's some curvature in the mesh or in the end-gun, then you will have some issues. If I do come along one of those issues, I will try to explain it there and then, but currently we don't have any issues, so it's all good. So because this is on a more of a flat plane, we don't have any issues. We don't have to add the circle, although we can if we want to, but it doesn't matter too much. Alright, so sometimes you will encounter a problem like this here, where it creates a pinch point on the edge on a curved surface. One technique I found that usually works relatively well is to create a triangle here, and then we just bevel it. And then slide the edges like this. And reapply the bevel, and it somewhat fixes it, not always, but in this case it doesn't matter too much. It's a relatively small problem. Also another issue, usually when you want, when there's a curve, you want the verts to go out off the normal of the vertex. So because they're not going off the normal, they're kind of shifted left and up and right, left and up. So it creates this awkward bevel. To fix that, we can just neutralize it a lot, slightly, like this, so that it's more neutral, I guess. Alright, pretty much done with this bit. Select the middle, set a cursor there, select this, and there you go. We have the rear sight. Although I'm thinking it's a bit too soft, so I'm just going to select all these meshes I've done and Control W and just move it down a little bit. That should tighten the bevels a bit more. Right, here's another good example of a problem, which we've discussed earlier. So usually to fix this you can just move the edge bits a bit backwards, so the corner knows how to float around. And then we can add some support loops as well. So right, so still a bit awkward. We could do a bevel again here, and then just connect it up like this. It will be quite tight. It creates a tiny dimple, I guess. Or we can revert it to how it was and just give it some support on this edge. Still a problem here. So I reckon the best fix for that is to do what I just done. Bevel it slightly and then let it flow how it needs to be. Alright, so for areas like these, we could be lazy and just hit him with a triangulation. Actually, I will, just to display this little technique. You just triangulate it however, and give us some support. Cut it incorrectly there, no problem, we'll just redo it. It looks horrible, but it works relatively well. So we'll leave that for now. Grab the out a bit. And consult the reference again. It's quite beveled on the outside, and the cutoff of the barrel is extremely sharp because it doesn't come into much contact with the outside world. I forgot to mention that you do want to merge by distance once you've done that. As you can see, some edges like here, they come into one point and they stay at one point, so merging by distance removes the double verts. Yeah, also if you get issues like this, well, in the highpoly it doesn't look too bad, but in the mesh it looks bad, is because the bevel is overlapping an edge, edge loop, a vertex, a face, or whatever. So you can just slide it out of its way for a bit, and that should work fine. Alright, another similar issue. This time it's on almost a flat plane. If it wasn't a flat plane, it wouldn't be an issue. Just to show. Or a minimal issue. We could fix it by giving this a slight bevel as well. And there you go. Wasn't much of an issue because it would be hidden by the rear sight anyway. Unless you really pixel peeked into it. Which I doubt you would. I doubt anyone would, but it's good. Sometimes good to just, you know, fix issues that, even though they may not be visible. Right, we're gonna have a huge issue here. As you can see, it's a tight triangle meeting at one point. So we will leave it for now. Alright, so let's sort this bit out. As previously, we can just literally hit it with a triangulation. It seems to work relatively okay. Although I wouldn't recommend always using triangulation. It doesn't really... It's not the #1 solution to problems like that. Usually what I would do is try to remove the really sharp angles, or really sharp triangles. For example, I'd add a loop cut here. And then maybe spread out the triangles a bit more like this. Perhaps even another loop cut. Slightly more sensible. Although this bit is struggling because it is missing some structure. Same thing here. Not doing anything important here, so we can just add this like this. Also, yeah, same thing here. As you can see, the very sharp at the top and getting stretched outwards because of these vertices here. Simple fix, just do this. Basically give it some space. And kind of neutralize the angles. And now it's perfectly fine. Now we have issue here. The bevel kinda screws up because again it's lacking geometry. Very simple fix. Cut off like that, and there you go. Now he knows what he's doing. Same thing here. Well, not as bad, but we'll give it some structure anyway. So we already have this, we can just push it aside. Alright, let's try tackle this bit. Alright, just gonna show what I was talking about. Although it's not too bad, you can definitely see the artifact of the bevel kind of going from extremely fine to low res. We could experiment with some bits, like add continue the bevel along, so it kind of follows somewhat smoothly. It's still a problem. Not a huge issue, to be honest, in my books. We could add a typical loop cut around it to support it. Again, it creates kind of a pinch. Could make it carry on along the edge. Remove those triangles and then kind of ease it out. That could work if you want to do it like really properly, but I'll just go along with this. It's not much of a trade-off, especially from far away, and when the material is applied, you really will not see much of an issue here. So I guess in this case speed kind of helps out. Although, whilst looking at the reference, you do see the continuation of the line. So it's, I guess, personal preference. Yeah, you can really see the line. It's just the way the milling would happen. I've got some issues here as well. Instead of beveling it, we could just give it some support around it. This is a bit awkward. Now you can see the bevel overlaps the edge, which is not a good thing. Again, easy fix. And give it some support. And that should be almost it. Didn't work so well on this edge for some reason. Right, sometimes this kind of happens, I'm not entirely sure why. It's probably because of this angle here. No? Yeah, that's right. So if you get this really stubborn issue here, where literally affecting the support geometry doesn't help, and adding more supports also doesn't help, sometimes Blender kind of goofs up. So just select it and move about slightly. You can see it just breaks back into normality, and there's your issue fixed. Don't know why this happens, but it does. So kind of have to get used to it. Right, so the serrations work kind of okay. The main issue being is at the top connections, as you can see right here. It's because the curvatures don't align, and usually when you try to put a boolean, sorry, not boolean, a bevel on a curve, it really doesn't like that. Luckily, it's not a perfect circular shape at the top. It's been cut off, so there's quite a sharp edge running along here. This will help us kind of sort out a little bit. We could do the long way of working about this, and just to add support loops around every single one of them, and then you try to keep them as uniform as they can be. There you go. Yeah, that pretty much works. So you give it slightly more curvature around, and it kind of conforms to the overall curved surface. So pretty much what we're going to have to do is just apply the same technique to every single one now, which is a bit time consuming, but it's not the end of the world. Alright, so we've done this one side. It looks significantly better than the other side, although you can still probably make out a tiny bit of deformation, especially if we use this kind of different matcap. We still need to add a couple more supports, so something like this, typically. And, yeah. So typically when you add something like this, it should straighten the surface out a bit. Avoid any issues of these bevels overlapping again. So I will quickly go about on the other side and then fix it up how it should be. Alright, serrations are done. I think the slide is done, other than this tiny problem I just noticed here. It just needs some support like this. And it needs to be beveled as well, which I surprisingly forgot to do. Also this in a bit. Alright, so essentially that's how you'd go about to create a high poly using a low poly blockout. Just adding bevel weights, adding some supporting edges in certain areas where they are needed. Triangulation and guns don't matter too much as long as you control them correctly. So if it comes to curved surface, you typically try to go quads. If it's something flat, it doesn't really matter, you can do whatever you want. So I'm gonna probably try speed through the rest of the model so we can move on to the next bit. If I do find something noteworthy to mention, I will probably talk through it again. Well, talk through it as I usually have throughout this entire thing. So yeah. Although there are some issues here that we should. I just realized.